Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Joshua Forsyth, and today we're going to be talking about the NFL and the fact that we're already a quarter of the way through the season. Well, it's hard to believe, but we're already a quarter of the way through the NFL season. And I think the biggest reason that we are surprised by that fact is that normally we would be starting the regular season at this point. The lack of a preseason means that 4 games in, we're already the quarter of the way, and not just starting the regular season. To me, it's kind of caught me by surprise that we're already at this point. Uh, I kind of want to break down just my quarter of the way impressions, and just starting us off by saying that it's unfortunate, but we're starting to see the impact that COVID is having on games and the schedule. And this week we saw the game between the Tennessee Titans and the Pittsburgh Steelers get postponed, and so those guys basically had a bye week, with the Tennessee Titans having multiple positive tests, and it sounds like they are back in their facility and starting to prepare for this week. And we're also starting to see some just players here and there are starting to miss games. So Cam Newton missed the start for the New England Patriots, and boy, did we see a difference there. It's amazing the impact that we now see he has on that roster. Starting to see Hoyer and Stidham, struggle quite a bit in their game in his place. One of the other major factors that we've seen so far is the fact that Bill O'Brien is now out as head coach of the Houston Texans. After an 0-4 start, I don't believe that anyone is really surprised by this news. But maybe one of the rumors that we're starting to see is the fact that J.J. Watt and Bill O'Brien were having some arguments on field, not during the game, but just in while they're preparing and after the game, and it did end up leading to him being fired. I don't believe that J.J. Watt would wish that upon anyone. We know by everything that he's done, both in the media and outside of the media, that he is a stand-up guy. But at the same point, he is a competitive one and wants to win. And I don't blame him at all. When things aren't going well, you do want to have that conversation. What can we change? What can we do? And it's ultimately not his decision in the first place. But we are seeing now that Romeo Crennel is going to take his stead. He's going to be replacing O'Brien, and do want to remind everyone that while he did struggle as a head coach with Cleveland while he was there, I believe his record was 28-55 as a head coach. He does also have 5 Super Bowls as an assistant to his resume, and he is getting up there in age, but with age comes wisdom and experience, and boy, does he ever have a lot of it. I do think that he is going to bring some different energy to this roster. I think that the players will want to play for him, and I've seen some articles and some interviews with him already stating that he doesn't believe that they are out of the playoff picture. It's going to be a tough road for them. They are 0-4, and there is a reason for that. And also the Tennessee Titans being 3-0. That it's a long road to climb. Both with Indianapolis also being 3-1 to start this season. What I have noticed through the start of the season is that big teams, big players, and kind of the stalwarts that we expect to see at the top are at the top. Seeing a game between Kansas City and Baltimore as the perfect example of the cream rising to the top. And boy, I tell you, it's impressive to see the Kansas City Chiefs turn it on when they need to. And you really didn't see a whole lot going for Baltimore in that game when they've looked outstanding through every other aspect of this season, and even bouncing back last week with another win. When you're starting to see the familiar faces continue to perform well, you're starting to see the coaching, you're starting to see the veterans playing well, you're starting to see the people who have been there before are there again. What I would like to do as well today is kind of go through the divisions and break down where we are so far. I'm going to start over in the AFC. We will talk about the AFC South. We just kind of mentioned it as we walked through, but leading the way are the 3-0 Tennessee Titans. They did have their somewhat impromptu bye week last week, and their schedule will be changing because of that. But they are 3-0. They have looked very impressive. They are relying very heavily on Derrick Henry and the run game. By far and away, he has the most carries this season. But they have looked very impressive to this point. An interesting thing is the fact that they've only scored 80 points in those 3 games and allowed 74. It's a tough way to go about it, but they've come through clutch when they've needed it. The Indianapolis Colts are 3-1. They have 103 points scored and 56 against. So they are doing quite well there. They're 2-0 at home, 1-1 on the road. They've also won their last 3 games. Jacksonville coming in at 1-3. I don't think anyone is surprised by the fact that they have struggled so far this season. And I think they're going to find their way to the bottom of this division somehow, some way. It's going to be a tough year for them the whole way through. But I do think that they do have a plan in place for the future. It's just not for this year. The Houston Texans, as we've already mentioned, are 0-4, are going through their coaching change. And I do see them coming back and playing well, but they are very, very well behind at this point and have dug themselves a hole. Let's see if they can find their way out of it. Moving over to the AFC East, we are quite used to seeing the New England Patriots at the top of this division. As I predicted at the start of this season, we were going to see a change of the guard, and the Buffalo Bills are well on their way at this point at 4-0. Josh Allen has performed tremendously well leading this team, and they are one of the most stout defenses that we will see. They haven't performed as well as expected on defense, and yet they're still able to come away with some big plays when they need it. Of course, the New England Patriots right behind them at 2-2. We did see Cam Newton miss last week, so could they be 3-1? Yes. It was going to be a tough game anyways, and we're going to see the effects of that. But they are 2-2 at this point. Cam Newton has been very impressive as he's played, and I think that was going to be the biggest storyline for their offense this year. Their defense is missing a few players due to sitting out the season, but they have played quite well despite that. The Miami Dolphins, with Ryan Fitzpatrick at the helm, are 1-3. I do wonder how long we are going to go before we see Tua Tagovailoa. He has looked very well on the sideline holding that clipboard. Let's see if he can move those hips still after those surgeries. I'm very impressed by him as he had his career in Alabama. I would love to see him get his first few starts if he is healthy enough to do so, which if he's on the sideline, I'm guessing he is. The New York Jets are 0-4 and have looked it. They are struggling in every facet of the game. Sam Darnold looks like he is back to seeing those ghosts that he saw last season. And boy, I really don't know what more to say about this team than they are struggling. I said in an earlier video that if you have a player at the caliber of Jamal Adams and your biggest complaint with him is that he wants to win now rather than win later, and you can't help appease that, there are more factors at play and more issues at hand than what you are leading on. And at 0-4, boy, is he glad to be going to a different team, and we'll get more to that later. The Kansas City Chiefs over in the AFC West are 4-0 and have looked very, very impressive. Mahomes has been steady at the helm, and right off the bat you can see they have 117 points scored and 70 against, and have played some good teams in that process to get to 4-0. The Las Vegas Raiders are 2-2 and are still somewhat getting acclimated to playing in Las Vegas. I think that is going to be a bit of a change for them, especially in a city like Las Vegas. But they are a team that's on the rise. I am very impressed by a lot of the players on that team and a lot of things that they are doing. I love their tight end, Mr. Waller over there. I think they need to keep feeding him as much as they possibly can. They are on a 2-game skid after starting 2-0, but I do expect them to start, pulling things back. Obviously, maybe not this week, as we have a big test in playing the division-leading Kansas City Chiefs. Third on this list would be the Los Angeles Chargers. They are sitting at 1-3, as are the 1-3 Denver Broncos. Both of these teams at this point are struggling to find their identity. The Chargers are going with Mr. Herbert there at quarterback, after the fact that Tyrod Taylor was injured in a pre-game medical procedure where his lung was punctured by the team physician. And as dangerous and as terrible as that sounds, it does seem to be more understandable that this is a risk of the procedure they were doing, where they were numbing the ribs right before game time, so that he could continue to play, and this is a risk that could happen during this procedure. There was no negligence involved as was originally expected with some of the cryptic tweets that came out. I think that's partially due to the fact of the world we live in now with social media. But I mean, I'll tell you right off the bat too, is the first time I read that, I had to read it 6 or 7 times before I actually made sense of what I was reading. It was definitely shocking to see that his lung was punctured by the team physician. That just never sounds good. But I do think that it will be his team again when he is healthy to do so. I have been very impressed by Justin Herbert and the way he's taken the ball and ran with it. But it would be nice to see him again get some more experience watching the game, be more prepared by the time he actually goes in and gets to play. The AFC North is being led by the 3-0 Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, last week they weren't able to play, and through no fault of their own, which to me would be a bit of a shock to the system. And we'll see how they bounce back from that this week. But yes, they are 3-0. They have looked very, very impressive. Again, leading the way in Steelers football. It is 80 points for and 58 points against. If memory serves me correctly, they are top 3 right now in points against. And yeah, they're just the way they have always played is controlling the ball and winning games in the dirty, gritty areas, and it's been very impressive to watch at this point. The Baltimore Ravens are 3-1 and are second in the division. They are changing some things up this year. They're throwing the ball a little bit more than they did last year. I think that is something that they feel more comfortable doing. But as we saw against the Kansas City Chiefs in week 3, that it was very difficult for them to get the run game going after the pass game wasn't working. So maybe they're changing things up a little too much. They want to get that run game going a little bit more before they start to open things up. I have been very impressed by their rookie linebacker, Patrick Queen. I think he fits this team like a glove, and both in the pass defenses, tackles, and actually thirdly, even in forcing a few sacks, he's really jumped out as a strong defensive player as a rookie. The Cleveland Browns are 3-1 and have really impressed me as of late. They seem like they're clicking on all cylinders on offense, especially after the week 1 drubbing to the Ravens. They have really bounced back strong with 3 straight wins, and this division does look like it's very wide open and up for the taking. Have been very impressed by Odell Beckham Jr. and getting involved in all facets of the game, including the run game, with a few trick plays there last week. And it, seeing some creativity, seeing them have fun. It's been a city that has been longing for that, and I can't even tell you for how many years at this point. It doesn't seem like anybody on that roster has had fun. And that looks like they're starting to enjoy themselves and win some games there. The Cincinnati Bengals, I've been very impressed by Joe Burrow. However, they are sitting at 1-2-1, and they are striding in the right directions. They are, he has won his last game, his first win. The week before was a tie. Maybe they should have been able to pull that one out. But again, you're starting to go in the right direction there. This week they do have a tough road ahead of them as they do face the Ravens. Moving over to the NFC, we are going to be talking about the Seattle Seahawks in the NFC West. They are 4-0, and they have come up with some major big plays when they need it. They've played some real stiff competition, and they've come out ahead in every single game so far. They have 142 points for and 109 points against at this point. They have played 2 conference games. They have not played a divisional game as of yet. The Los Angeles Rams are 3-1, right on the heels of those Seahawks, and I've been very impressed by Jared Goff. It seems as though his decision-making has improved. He is really starting to find his receivers. They are protecting him a touch with the distance in his passes. However, when he's thrown that deep ball and released it, he's released it very well. And I've seen a nice tight spiral out of him, dropping some dimes on his receiver's hands. It's been a lot of fun to see his improvement again as well, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do moving forward. The Arizona Cardinals and the San Francisco 49ers are both sitting at 2-2, and I think both teams would be disappointed with where they are sitting at this point. And at the same point, we haven't seen them play to the best of their ability yet. So they are only 2 games back at this point. I think you're going to start to see more of a battle creep in as more divisional games start to be played. And this division is top to bottom a very good division. And I think you're going to start to see both the Seahawks come back a little bit, as well as the Cardinals and 49ers start to move up and they're just going to beat each other up all season, this whole division. And every time that there's going to be a divisional game in this season, I'm going to try and find a way to watch it because they are going to be fun battles. Moving over to the NFC South, we have Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 3-1. And after week one, I think we saw a few fans maybe press the panic button a bit too early. You see a little bit more of a groove now that they have started to find with their offense. Tom Brady is starting to be a little bit more comfortable in the system, and I think you're starting to see what this team is going to be capable of. And if it's anything like last week, I think a lot of teams have something to worry about in the NFC. The New Orleans Saints are 2-2, and after that first week, they kind of hit a little bump in the road there with 2 straight losses after that. They did bounce back last week with another win, and again, they battled some injuries so far to the start of the season, but I do think that they're going to be just fine moving forward. The Carolina Panthers are sitting at 2-2, and they are one of the most intriguing teams to me at this point, where they are really going to be trying to put up points, and they're really going to try and find a way not to give points up. So far, they've given up 102 points while they've scored 99. But man, it is crazy to see the big offensive play that doesn't turn into points. And then going right back the other way, you're desperately trying not to give up a big play. And it's just, if it works, you're good. If it doesn't, you're in trouble. And starting to see Bridgewater, I think, get a little bit more comfortable under center there as well. They have won 2 straight games to get to this point, and I think they're going to be relying heavily on McCaffrey so long as he can stay healthy. The Atlanta Falcons have been an interesting team, to say the least. They have had large leads slip away at this point in the season. They should be at worst 2-2, and yet are sitting at 0-4. And I don't know what is going on in that locker room. I don't know how you have any confidence going forward after letting these leads slip away and being demolished emotionally in these losses. They have scored 106 points and given up 138. And again, just devastating losses. Losing an onside kick where it seemed like the recovery team doesn't know that they can go and get the ball before the 10 yards. How you're on the hands team and you don't know that, I have no idea. You are probably no longer on the hands team, let's put it that way. Moving over to the NFC East. Yuck. I'm sorry to say it, but your division leading Philadelphia Eagles at 1-2-1, and I have nothing good to say at this point for this division. Nothing. And it's going to be tough at this point to find some silver lining. As I'm clearly stating, I don't have one yet for any single team in this division. Any one of them, I don't have it. Moving on, the NFC North, we have the Green Bay Packers at 4-0, and Mr. Aaron Rodgers behind the helm there has played with that chip on his shoulder ever since having Jordan Love drafted in the first round, and boy has he looked good. The Chicago Bears, somewhat surprisingly, sit at 3-1 and have had some wins come their way that maybe shouldn't have happened. The Falcons, again, being one of those. And the Detroit Lions in week 1 probably should have stolen one back from them as well. Moving on to those Lions, we are seeing them at 1-3 as well as the Vikings. And again, you're going to see some growing pains from the Lions. They are a younger team. I think you're going to see them be a little bit more cohesive come near the end of this season. I am interested to see what happens with head coach Matt Patricia if they don't start to win some games earlier than that. But I think if they do let him keep control of this team, they are going to start to see some strides. But as they stated before the season started, if they don't make the playoffs, he's gone. The Vikings, being a playoff team last year and suddenly seeing themselves at 1-3, it is going to be difficult for them to pull themselves out of this hole in this division. You are now sitting already 3 games behind the Packers, and the Packers are 2-0 in the division. So again, you're gonna have a tough climb. It's not quite like the Seahawks where you're 4-0 and you haven't played a divisional game yet. This is a little bit of a different picture where you're starting to see, okay, the teams that we're supposed to beat, that we're supposed to face more often in the season, we're already beating them. And this division does seem like the Packers have an advantage. Like I said, with the Bears being 3-1, they've already gone through a quarterback change, and you're sitting there. You've scored 85 points and have given up 81. So it's not like you're dominating your wins, and it's not like you're getting blown out in your losses. But it's going to be a tough road for them to compete all season long with those Packers. Going into some of the stat leaders for the season so far, I do want to highlight Dak Prescott with 1,690 passing yards only 4 games into the season. He is well on his way to having a good statistical year. He has thrown 9 touchdowns and only 3 interceptions, and has single-handedly kept his team in quite a few of these games. It has been impressive to me to see him do this. He has been sacked 9 times as well, totaling 60 yards. And again, he just finds ways to keep plays alive and keep games alive. I've been very impressed by seeing what he's done so far. Josh Allen is in second for passing yards with 1,326. He has thrown 12 touchdowns and 1 interception, and has led the Bills to a great start. I am very impressed with this young man, and it seems like every game he seems to get better. I've really enjoyed watching him at the helm of this team. And Russell Wilson, again, 1,285 yards, 16 touchdowns through 4 weeks, and 2 interceptions. Again, I can't say enough good things about his play right now. And just, looking at the amount of touchdowns being thrown right now, Russell Wilson is number 1. Aaron Rodgers there with 13 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. It's been incredible to watch. Josh Allen there again with 12 touchdowns, 1 interception. Patrick Mahomes, 11 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And then a familiar face that some of us may have forgotten about, Tom Brady with 11 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. A lot of those coming early on. Our rushing leaders, we are seeing Dalvin Cook with 424 yards through 4 weeks. He has 75 attempts and 6 touchdowns so far. Again, relying very heavily on the run. That is their plan, the run, and of course the play action. Aaron Jones for Green Bay with 374 yards on 65 attempts with 4 touchdowns. Nick Chubb over in Cleveland with 335 yards on 57 attempts with 4 touchdowns as well. And then we see the workhorse, Mr. Derrick Henry. He has 319 yards with 82 attempts so far this season. And the only person I believe with more rushing attempts this season so far is Josh Jacobs. Yes, he has 83 with 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Raiders did state that they were going to rely more heavily on him this season, and they're relying quite a bit. Receiving, we're going to look at DeAndre Hopkins, my apologies, with 397 yards, 39 receptions, and only 1 touchdown so far. He's leading in catches, and he is in the top 4 for receiving yards. And one of the more impressive things for me so far right now, you're seeing 4 receivers within 6 yards for the league lead. DK Metcalf leading the way with 403, as well as Stephon Diggs with 403. Amari Cooper with 401, and as mentioned, Nuke Hopkins has 397. One of the things that jumps off the stat page to me is the number of receptions that it has taken DK Metcalf to have those 403 yards. He has 16 receptions. No, that's not a typo. He is averaging over 25 yards per catch, and he has 3 touchdowns to go along with them. When you look at DK Metcalf, you think immediately that he is going to be electrifying on the field. He has a physique like no other receiver I have ever seen, and he is fast, he is explosive, and he is able to manhandle cornerbacks like I have never seen a receiver do. He is looking like what Gronk did for the tight end position, he is doing now for the receiver position, and it is very impressive to watch, and I'm going to be very excited to see what Russell Wilson draws up to get him the ball next week. Looking over on the defensive side, we do see Eric Kendricks with 45 tackles, and 25 of them being solo tackles. He has very, very well run that Minnesota Vikings defense, and they have been on the field quite a bit so far, but he has very impressive numbers to go along with that. Our sack leaders for the year so far is Zadarius Smith with 5 sacks, as well as Myles Garrett, and Aldon Smith, somewhat surprisingly, there with 4 sacks, Yannick Ngakoue with 4 as well. And looking over at the interceptions, we do see Pierre Desir with 3 interceptions so far through 4 games. Again, with the Jets being as porous as they are, it is not surprising to see someone like that be on the field as much as he is. He's going to get those opportunities to play aggressive and get those picks. Moving over to my top 4 teams through the first 4 weeks, my 4th team would be the Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, with Baltimore losing to Kansas City, they have fallen back a bit in my books. How do you deny a team that is undefeated at this point? Yes, they've played one less game with that bye week, but in my opinion, they have the best front 7 in the NFL defensively. When you have players like TJ Watt leading the way, and you have young players like Bush coming behind him, it is very impressive what they do with the speed they do it at, with the aggression they come at the ball with. Oh, and then you have Minkah Fitzpatrick in the backfield also wreaking havoc on plays back there. My number 3 team is still going to be those Green Bay Packers. I am very impressed by Rodgers and what he's done with this offense. Again, not to harp on this fact, but never having a skill position player drafted for him up until a player at his own position. It's all the motivation he's needed this season, and he is playing well beyond expectations, even for him. Number 2, still somewhat surprising, is going to be the defending Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. They have played well. They have been dominant at times. Their dismantling of the Baltimore Ravens needs no more talking about. Everyone knows what they did there. However, I just am more impressed by my number 1 seed, the Seattle Seahawks. The games that they have played, the teams that they have played, have been impressive. The way that Russell Wilson is playing, to me, is worthy of some MVP votes, if not the actual distinction of being the league's MVP. Bringing Jamal Adams into that defense, you are starting to see that swagger. You are starting to see them come back and bring back the feelings of the Legion of Boom. And you can see just the disruption he causes, even if he's not involved in the play itself. Pre-snap, you start to see him move closer to the line or call out a defensive coverage, and then you see the quarterback try to adjust. It is one of the things I've loved so far through 4 weeks, with no fans or limited fans in stadiums. We are able to start to hear a lot of the pre-snap adjustments. We are able to start to distinguish who's calling what, who's calling, where they're supposed to be, some of the cadences with snaps being changed, and seeing the quarterbacks, both offensively and defensively, change plays audible into something else that they see. It's been very fun and intriguing to me to watch that. Last but not least, I'd like to talk about my game of the week upcoming, and it is going to be the 4-0 Buffalo Bills against the 3-0 Tennessee Titans. I think there's a storyline in and of itself that you have 2 undefeated teams playing each other, but as well as that, we have how Tennessee is going to come back after the disaster of last week, where you have nearly 20 players and multiple staff all test positive for COVID, and now you've missed a week, and how are we going to come back and bounce back from that against a team that is as stout as the Buffalo Bills? I'm very intrigued to see what happens here. I think we're going to get a heavy dose of Derrick Henry, and I think that the Bills' defense is going to be expecting that very early and very often. I really am intrigued to see what Josh Allen can do against this defense and use the weapons at his disposal. I think Diggs is going to have a big game, and maybe start to see some plays drawn up for Singletary as well, where we get him involved, maybe in the pass game as well. Well, again, thank you so much for watching my show. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to click that little bell for the notifications for the new videos as well. Thank you so much, guys. Love you.